Happy Monday, everyone. Thanks for joining us at our weekly Reuzel Scumbassador live demonstration. I'm Carrie Fonte with Reuzel Education. We're so happy you're here with us today. Nicholas Giberson is going to lead us through our demonstration from Pensacola, Florida. He's done a few of these before. I know you're going to enjoy it. Nicholas does a great job. Remember, any questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, type them in the comment section. If you've got a question, I'll wait till the appropriate time and I'll interrupt Nicholas and we'll get you that answer. And with that, and tell us where you're watching from. It's been really fun to see all the international viewers that have been with us. So type on in there where you're calling in from. And with that now, Nicholas, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Carrie. Hey, everybody out there on the World Wide Web. As Carrie said, my name is Nicholas Giberson, and I'm very happy to be here today. This is about my fourth or fifth Facebook Live demonstration since last year, and I'm very excited to share with you today. Especially coming off of this past weekend was actually my 6-year anniversary of being a licensed barber, so that's super exciting for me. Happy International Women's Day to everybody watching. And we're going to get into my haircut today on my model, John. So John, actually, I love John's hair. He's got some of the best hair I've ever cut. And I use him a lot of times. I'll use him as like a model for photo shoots, just whatever we're doing. This is the first time actually using him as a model for anything Reuzel related as far as the class goes. So I'm super excited to get into it. He's got a natural little bit of wave going on with his hair. His density is awesome. It's pretty thick. Hairline, kind of all over the place, kind of grows all over the place in the nape. Around the ears, doesn't go up too high up around his ear. So I'm just looking at all these things as far as his head shape, contour of his skull, what his hair is like, all these things to keep in mind before I get into his haircut. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to wet down his hair. I got a mixture of the blue hair tonic with some water, about 8% water, 20% hair tonic. Wet down the hair, super saturated. Anything the hair is going to do with water and tonic, the hair will do with pomade. So go ahead and wet him down. Let's see what his hair wants to do. I know what his hair will do for the most part because I've been cutting his hair for a couple of years now. I'd probably say 4 or 5 years. John was actually in the Navy for a while. And when he decided he was getting out and he was going to stay here, I was super stoked on it because he has awesome hair and I love cutting it. So just kind of wet it down, see what it wants to do, see what it'll let me do. It's one of those things like when you're getting ready to do a haircut, you don't want to try to force the hair to do something it doesn't want to do. So you always have to honor and respect the natural fall and growth patterns of the hair. And just knowing John's hair, it'll pretty much do whatever I want it to do. And today I think we're going to do more of a classic pompadour. If you've been keeping up with us over the last year or so, and if you've been watching what I've been doing, last couple of demonstrations, I've done scumbag boogies, I've done crops, I did somewhat of a flat-topped pompadour type haircut. So we're just going to keep it classic and true to what Reuzel is. It's a nice little pompadour here. And I'll taper out his neck. That would get a little bit of clipper work as well. All right, now this hair is nice and wet. The very first thing I'm going to do is create my part line. My part line is going to help me establish my baseline. For pretty much every single haircut we do at Reuzel, it all starts with a baseline. But before I get my baseline, I need to get my parting. So I'm going to find his natural recession right here on the corner of his forehead. You can see it right there. So I'm going to take my comb with nice even tension. I'm going to comb through, and I'm going to follow his head shape down and around to center back to create my parting. So I'm going to come in and then slide down and around. And when I did that, notice where I left my finger right there? I'm keeping that pressure on the hair on the top of his head. That way I can get into and comb it out of the way to create a nice clean parting. I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I was in barber school, I didn't really get a whole lot of information on how to part hair or even how to section hair at all, honestly. All we ever did was just throw guards on the clipper and cut the hair. But for me, and my experience, and if you've had this experience as well, let me know in the comment box. The cleaner your part lines are, the cleaner your haircut's going to be. So once I set my part, I can always check it. I always show this. This is just one of the things, it's like staples of whenever I'm doing live education or even Facebook live education. Showcase where my parting is. Feel his head, just kind of see where his parietal bumps out at. But I'm going to take a comb right behind his ear, flattest part of the head. Take another comb on the apex. Touch the tips. You can see that square shape right there, yes. And if you were to split that square shape, a 45-degree angle, that's where your parting is going to be. And you can do the same thing in the back to check as well. Of course, you can always adjust up or down, left or right, depending on the actual head shape, if he has any protruding bones as far as his occipital or if his parietal is higher or lower. But what I like to do, same thing, off the apex, off of the occipital, straight up. You see that square shape right there. Split it, 45. That's how you know your parting has a proper placement. So, once we got his hair where we want it, combed out of the way with his part, we're going to create our baseline. And I'm not here to tell you that this is the best way to cut hair. This is the only way to cut hair. I'm sure you guys always hear this. This is just how we cut hair. This is what I found it works best for me, using some of these techniques in my day-to-day practice. But before we get into my baseline, most of us have been cutting with masks now for a year or so. I just wanted to share this little tip. One of the things I picked up over the last year as far as moving a mask out of the way. Just take a flip, take my mask, and put it out of the way. That way I have a nice area to work in. When I get to the other side, I'll just transition the flip to the other side. All right, so now I'm getting into my baseline, right? I'm going to go center of the side of the head, right above the ear. It's the squarest, flattest part of the head. Now, why do I want to start there? If I'm starting right here, and I'm pulling all of this hair out at 90 degrees, it's going to give me my square shape right there. So if you were to start from the temple region right here and pull all this hair out 90 degrees from the head shape, I'm rounded. So I'm not going to be square. Typically what we like to do when we're doing our classic haircuts is we like to have a 90-degree shape or a square shape. So with John's hair, what I want to do, I want to keep most of this stuff, this hair coming from the parting line right here. I like the length he's got. We're going to have, like I said, we're going to do a nice brush back pompadour. I want to keep a good bit of this length because I want to connect with the top. So I'm not taking a whole lot off the top. So I'm coming up, scooping everything up, pulling out at 90 degrees. And the idea is when you pull this hair up and out at 90 degrees, you want it as flat as possible, as if you're to envision a marble laying on this hair, that it's going to remain flat in center. It's not going to drift towards you or drift away from you. One of those things you can typically do is just check in the mirror, check for your flat square shape. So pull it up, I'm checking in the mirror, as square as I believe I can get it. And typically my body positioning is going to be square to my line as well. Come up, take off about an inch or so. Now that I've created my first line, now I'm going to move forward and cut this front section to my middle guide right there. Now we're going to work our way down and around, still creating our baseline to center back right here. And we're following the head shape. That's one of the biggest and most important things as far as creating your baseline is you're going to follow your head shape and drop it down and around. Just because we want to keep this length here, this is why we dropped our horseshoe down instead of doing like more of a traditional horseshoe parting where it's up and it splits that crown right there. We drop down into it a little bit. So still pulling this hair out square. You can see what I'm going to cut. You can see what I've already previously cut. You can see the angle of my comb is mirroring my part above it. Now I'm in this back corner right here. Same thing. Comb is still mirroring my part. I'm going to snip. Drop him down just a little bit. There you go. See what I've cut. See where I'm going. Now we have established our baseline. So when you comb all this hair down back to its natural position where it grows out, you can see that line right there. It's a baseline. So what we're going to do next is we're going to pull up all of our hair to our baseline, working from the top down. And I like to work from the top down because it allows me to preserve some hair length just in case. It helps me build up a shape, realistically, is what I'm trying to say here. If I'm starting from the top down, I'm tapering down and in, I'm creating the shape that I want. A lot of the times, also when I was back in barber school, someone has this kind of hair, walk into the shop, walks into the school, they want maybe a bald fade. The first thing a lot of barbers I see, they're going straight in, they're taking their clipper, they're inverting it, they're cutting. Well, how do you know what length you want up at the top of the parietal ridge area? What are you working to? Nothing wrong with that technique. If you're experienced doing that, this is just something else to show you. So, same thing, working center, above the ear, pulling up to my guideline, my baseline right here, and cutting. Now we're going to move forward, do the same thing. Are there any questions so far? Anything about the techniques we're showcasing? Do you already cut hair like this? What kind of techniques do you like to use at home in your shop? So we hit right here center, we move forward. Again, follow down and around. Typically, this would be referred to as the boring hair. Not the most exciting thing to watch, but it does take a lot of skill to do it properly. I just know as a barber, myself, it's not the most exciting thing to watch other barbers do clipper work. Speaking of, if you are a barber or a stylist and you're watching today, just go ahead and let us know. What discipline do you practice? Are you more barber-minded? You cut more like a stylist? You're kind of a blend of both. What kind of cutting do you do? He's drying up a little bit, so I'm going down just a little bit more. So I have a little bit better control over the hair with my comb when it's wet. All right, still down and around my second section underneath my baseline. See right here. We like to refer to this portion of the hair cutting as more like our rough draft. Everything we do before we blow dry, I like to consider like a sketch. More rough draft of a haircut. Because once I dry it, I'm going to start refining it, adding a little bit of texture, taking out weight, really handcrafting the final product. All right, we're looking good. So now we're going to drop down to our last section around the ear and the sideburns, and then moving along to the nape. I will generally break everything down into 3 sections, and I always start in the center, move from right to left or from left to right, depending on where I'm at on the head. So now that I'm above the ear, move the ear out of the way. I see my guide above me. Teeth straight up, important to keep pulling the hair out 90 degrees. Being cautious of his beard and the sideburns, that transition right there. So you still want to blend that a little bit, so pull out at 90. And continue moving down and around. I was thinking to myself earlier, I was like, man, it's been a while since I've done one of these. I wonder how everybody's been doing. It's been fun watching everybody else every week jumping onto the Facebook Live horse. For a minute there last year, I was doing one of these like every 6 weeks, I felt. It's like being a guest artist on a television show. I was up here every single week, it felt like. So one of the things I do want to point out and talk about is when you're doing this, if there are some heavy spots, it's okay. We're going to go back and refine. Like I said, this is more like our rough draft. And when you are using clipper over comb around the nape, you still want to get it as close as you can. I'm going to go back up into it afterwards with some guards and clean up my taper and stuff. So we're looking pretty good. All my hair, my parietal still brushes back, so we're looking great.
Nicholas,
Yes, ma'am.
we've got a nice group of international viewers today. We've got Poland with us, a lot from the United States, France, Indonesia, Albania. Everyone, let us know where you're watching from. Keep the comments coming. And a lot of compliments, Nicholas, as well. Good explanations. Your cut's looking great. So everyone's with you today.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in from around the world. It's always awesome connecting with you guys like this. I can't wait until we're back out on the road connecting with all of you in person. But for now, this is what we got, so we've got to make the best with it. All right, so there's our first side. Not too shabby. We're going to move around to the other side and just repeat the same process. But now that we're moving to the other side, go over here. I do just want to check for balance, and I'll typically do that in the mirror. And also, I'll do it by feel. Just set up his mask real quick. Hoping here in a few weeks, at least this crew, my camera person and myself, we can do this without wearing masks since we both started getting vaccinated, so that's fun. All right, so maybe I'll use John again, do something cool. He's already had it, so we're good. Okay, so checking for balance. I'm just pulling, again, center above the ear, pulling it out, seeing how much length I have on my left side and my right side. Over here so you can see. That's there here. Come over here so you can see what I got, pulling it out. So don't have to pull or remove so much length on my left side as I did on my right side. So I'll typically check above the ear, center, and I'll also check my corners back here behind the round of the head, or coming off the round of the head behind the ear, check those corners as well. Just checking for balance. That's about a ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch on each side.
There is a question, Nick.
Yes.
Are you using clean water or are you mixing hair tonic in with your water?
So I am mixing hair tonic into my water. John came into the shop today with a little of our blue Stronghold pomade in his hair because he's getting ready to go to work. And one of the great things about our hair tonic is it actually helps break down any product or oils or grease or grime in the hair. It's also a great conversation starter as far as selling product in the shop. Like if you're not so sure how to start that conversation with your patron at the shop, at least 5 times a week, I have a guy sit in my chair. If they've never been here, if I'm getting new clients, new patrons, however you refer to them, and I'll spray my water bottle, and every single time they look at me and they go, "What's in that water bottle?" I go, "Oh, it's a mixture of our Reuzel hair tonic and water." And then I explain the same thing to them as I just did you guys, what it does, what the benefits of it are. And then I'll even like mess with it and be like, "Oh yeah, actually it's even how I start the conversation about product as well." So that's something you could probably do at your shop if you're not super comfortable selling products. But yes, mixture of water and hair tonic. So same thing, if you're just joining us, I don't know if you just popped in or not. Same thing, creating my baseline, natural recession for my parting. Natural recession, down and around, didn't go as far down, so let me fix that. Down and around the center back. And something I like to do, so whenever I'm cutting hair, I'll typically have 1 to 2 combs. I have my clipper comb for my clipper work, and I have my regular styling comb for my scissor work. Whenever I'm creating my parting for my clipper work, I'll use my clipper comb. And as you see, as I transition to the top of the head here in a minute, I'll change up and use my other comb. What I like to do, I just like to do that because the way I cut, once I touch a tool, once I put it down, I try not to pick it back up again. Of course, it's a little different showcasing this demo for you guys online. Flip her down, pick it up a lot. But typically, if I'm working day-to-day in a barbershop, once I put my clippers down, I try not to pick them back up. Okay, so got my baseline, my parting set up again. And just as before, center above the ear, about an inch lower than my part. Come up, pull out. Your second side is going to be way easier than your first side because at least now you have side to where you're going to in the back. So once you do your first side, your second side will be way easier. Here we go. Close clipper, center of the head above the ear, come through, cut that length off, moving forward. Same thing. Pulling straight out from the head. So instead of pulling out 90 degrees this way, I'm still pulling up and out, slightly over directing that front section to center back, just in case it were a little bit longer. Again, mirroring my part, following down and around, center back, right above my occipital. And now my guide is behind me, moving forward, down and around. Also, take note of how I'm holding my comb on this side as opposed to how I was holding my comb on this side. When I was cutting down and around, handle on my comb is down this way. As I'm on my opposite side, being right-handed, the top of my comb is now facing down and center. And I cut in the same direction. Something I try to stress to my barbers here and to my students when I'm teaching is that you're oftentimes going to want to cut in the direction that you are styling. So if I'm doing a brushed back or pompadour type haircut, I want to cut in the diagonal back section because I'm going to be styling diagonal and back. So if you were going to do a crop, typically you would cut diagonal and forward because you're styling it in that direction. All right, pull everything back down so I can see my baseline. It's darker hair, but you can see it. It's in there. So, baseline is established. Something else I like to do, just a little helpful tip and trick. I don't know if you guys do this. If you do this at home, let me know. I like to use a contrasting comb to the color of the hair. That way I can see what I'm doing, and that way you guys can see what I'm doing as well. And now that I'm moving lower on the side of the head, I'll raise this chair up. That way I'm always working within the box of my torso. And the box of my torso being my collarbones down to my belly button. That way I'm maintaining that square body positioning. My guide above it. Pull up to my guide. Now I'm going to move forward, same thing. Now we're back here, moving towards my corner section. And last section in my middle segment here. Not a whole lot to remove. And there we go. All right, so now we're going to be moving to our lower section and then transitioning down to nape. So same thing. Middle bottom ear. My guideline is above me. Now one thing I do want to let you see is when I'm doing this, pull the ear down, comb in, and pull it out so the teeth are outside of and holding up the guide from before. A lot of times as you're starting to learn how to cut clipper over comb, you might not be fully aware of what your left hand is doing and your teeth might still be in. And if you cut, you're going to gap the haircut because your teeth aren't out. So I always try to pop my teeth out, pull the hair up at 90 degrees and cut. You can save and fix a lot of things using a blending scissor, but if you go in too deep on a haircut, if the teeth are in, they're going to gap it You can't really save that with a blending scissor. He's going to end up getting a skin fade. So we got our center there. Now we're working around the ear and the temple region. Moving a little bit differently with your comb. Watching the connecting area between the sideburn and the beard. Now we get behind the ear, going down, working towards the nape. See all this bulk I have to cut. Here's my guideline above it. Now for me, when I'm doing scissor or clipper over comb like this, going towards my nape section, anything below my occipital, it doesn't have to be as clean because I'm going to remove the weight with my clipper and my guards. But I want to try to get it as perfect as possible. So we're going to make sure it's very nice and clean. And just as you would if you're working a fade, I'm still going to check in my mirror, see if there's anything that's way too heavy. Everything's looking good. Drop this head down, drop my chair down. Again, wanting to work within the box of my torso here. And that's our baseline, and we're moving all of our weight on our opposite side. Are there any questions so far about creating a baseline, setting your parting, anything like that before we transition into nape? Give you a couple seconds.
No question.
Perfect. Everybody knows what we're doing. I love it.
Yep, you've got like
All right.
nice compliments, Nick. Like good explanations, easy to follow. So perfect timing. We're halfway through and everybody's hanging on, waiting for the rest.
Awesome. I always try to. I always keep the why in mind, so I make sure that I explain everything to the best of my ability. So thanks for all the awesome comments. I will get back to everybody once this is done. Afterwards, I'm going to take a picture of my haircut. I'll post it up on my Instagram. I'll send it to Carrie. We'll be able to post it wherever we got to post it. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram handle is Nicholas X Fury. I'll post all my work up there. So now we're going to transition into my taper.
Wait. Before you transition, now there is a question. So sorry about that. How long does the process of setting the baseline and clearing the bulk with clipper over comb typically take you when you're not teaching?
Maybe 5 minutes.
Awesome.
The haircuts at my shop were scheduled out for 45 minutes at the shop. As I'm talking, I'm just going to start cutting here to save time. Our haircuts at the shop typically take about 45 minutes. That's included with a style and a shampoo. So removing bulk will take me about 5 minutes. Maybe, it just depends on how much bulk I'm removing. Like if somebody comes in with a lot of hair, like ponytail, shoulder length hair, it might take me a little bit longer to remove all that bulk doing a flipper over comb technique, but that's what I prefer to use when I am removing that much bulk when the hair is that long. It just allows me to have more control of the hair. I kind of know what I'm setting myself up for. All right, so starting my taper, I got a 1.5 blade on my Babyliss Custom FX. It's an open 1.5 blade, and I'm flicking up into my flipper over comb work to allow me to create a softer blend, because I'm gonna have to go and take this weight out here in a minute with some more flipper over comb. The same thing as before, just as if I was working on the side, establishing my baseline. I'm working from my center, and I'm working from right to left, or from center, left, and right, just depending on how I'm spinning the chair. I closed it, flicking up underneath where my open 1.5 was. Now looking at his growth pattern right there, all this is going to get removed when I go open, but I still try to knock it down by inverting my flipper and going against the hair growth pattern. I'm not going to take too long doing this because I want to get to the cool hair. Take my flipper, close it. Again, working center, maybe about a 1/2 inch away from where the hairline ends. That's all that just depended on what you're doing as far as tapering. My general rule is if I have his occipital bone, I find that I typically will do like two or three fingers from the occipital bone was where I'll start my fade, and that's what I did. So I got my 3 fingers there. I got my line is where I would start. That's how I'll usually start, at least to visualize it, where I want the taper to be in the back of his head. I live in a military town in Pensacola, so one of the things a lot of times we'll get is these young Marines that come in and they want a high and tight or a fade, or like a 3-finger fade, which is like a high and tight. So kind of what I equate it to as far as 1, 2, or 3 fingers. I'm going to open up my clipper all the way. Again, about a 1/2 inch to an inch above that bottom line. With my C-shaped scooping motion, I'm going to flick up and out. Being aware of where I'm not going past that heavy line up there. I'm not going to blend up into that with my half guard, or my open clipper, excuse me. Close down halfway, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned within the last few years is you have to do this half step, because then that's how you're going to get that really nice fade in between your open and your closed. Again, starting center, flicking up and out, going right. Moving left. Next step, take my 1 guard, open it all the way up. Now I'm blending out, flicking out this half line right here, up to, but not into this weight. And you'll watch that line slowly start to disappear. If I need any more refinement of the fade, then I will throw my half guard on, just because his hair is so dark and his scalp is going to be so light, because he hasn't had a haircut in a minute and he hasn't been out in the sun. I don't know about where you guys are from, but even in Florida right now, where I'm at, it's so dark and dreary, so we're really looking forward to spring. So we really haven't had that much sun exposure on his scalp. Okay, close it halfway. Slightly drop below the area I was just working in. And the goal is to get rid of this bottom one here. Put it all the way. And it's starting to disappear. That's what we want to see. And last step, put my half guard on. Flick up into that bottom of that 1. Very quick like you close it all the way. And then hit that bottom. Okay. So there is a little bit of a weight line, like I said, from when we were flicking up and out with that 1.5. So I'm going to knock that out. I'm going to outline him real quick, and then we'll transition to the top. There you go. Lost my comb there. All right, cool. So as we take out that weight line, coming up underneath it, pulling the comb up and out, still pulling the hair out at 90 degrees. Again, still following the head shape. If it's still too heavy after this, we'll just clean it up with a refinement once we blow dry everything. See it starting to disappear, that's what we want. The right side, now we'll do the left side. Same thing, start behind the ear. I'm going to work my way towards center. And my comb is still angled when you're doing flipper over comb and trying to remove weight in that back to connect to the nape, you want to know of an angle. You're going horizontal, you're building weight and making a heavy line. I don't want that. It's a little bit. Cool. Again, if there's just a little bit of weight, I'm going to hit with my scissor over comb just to refine it towards the end. Now let's outline them real quick, then we'll transition to the top. I like to do my outline at this step normally, again, just like I mentioned before. Once I do my flipper work, I try not to do my flipper work anymore. Just try to get everything done the first pass, at least for my detailing around the ears. And I'm just using the corner of my trimmer. Pull my scissor comb here. Not pushing into the outline. There is natural hairline. Just trying to create that natural little arch there. Hitting his outline right here, going into his taper. Typically started at the mastoid bone down, still keeping it natural. I don't want to push it in. So one of the big things I try to preach whenever I'm doing classics or Reuzel inspired haircuts is we want to keep our outlines natural. So we're not pushing in the natural C arch in the front temple region. We're keeping everything how it is. Unless, of course, your client requests otherwise. At the end of the day, it's always super important that you do what the client asks for. All right, transition to the other side. Combing all this hair down. Again, coming off the mastoid bone there. Anybody else feel like an octopus? Your hands are an octopus when you're doing all this stuff, moving masks around, balancing combs, pulling down ears. While you're trying to do all these crazy haircuts these days. One of the things that took me a minute to get used to, moving and working around a mask. Actually, someone the other day asked me if it was going to be weird when we're no longer wearing masks, if it's going to be weird cutting hair not having a mask on. I said, you know, I actually don't know. It's been like this for so long now. It's going to be weird when we transition back to the old way of doing things. Okay. All right, now we're going to transition to the top of the head. My favorite stuff to do. All right, looking good on time. All right, so when I work on the top of the head, again, saturating everything, making sure it's nice and wet. So how I typically like to do things, as far as sections go, just depend on how I'm styling the hair. Just as I said earlier, like if I'm cutting something where it's going to be brushed back, I'm going to cut diagonal back. If I'm cutting something on the top and I know I'm cutting everything and styling everything from front to back, I'm also going to cut from front to back, right? So that being said, I'm going to create a center vertical parting across the top of the head. And I like to place my guide liner for my first section. Basically, it's going to be the width of a comb. And I will usually put in between the eyebrows. Let me see, head right here. And that's going to be my mohawk section. So that'll be my center vertical section right here. But that's generally how I find where I need to put it. I don't know if that's what you guys use at home as far as determining where you set up your middle guide section. That's how I do it. So, eyebrow, center back here. Again, I place my fingers and my hands on top of the section I'm combing away from. Make sure I have a nice clean section. Just cleaning up the center back. And then I will move to the front, place my finger kind of where I know the section is going to be. And same thing, center vertical to my occipital, comb all this hair down. And I have a general idea of what my center vertical section is going to look like. So what I like to do a lot of the times, if you have a lot of length on top, I'm not going to cut a whole lot off because I want that volume and I want that length for my pompadour, right? So I will check the front, see what I got. We've got some good length. We've been growing it out for a minute for this purpose. So we got some good length. Then I also check to see what my length in the back is going to be. I know I'm going to connect this section out, pulling 90 degrees to my baseline underneath. So I'm going to connect that there. But then, depending on how exaggerated a ramp I want on top will determine how much I actually cut off. So I got a good bit. I'll pull up here, pull up here. If you can envision with me here now, he's got a little bit of a ramp shape in there. A little bit, as you can see. Probably what we could do. Yeah, so let's go ahead and cut. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the back. So I'm going to cut, pulling all this out to 90 degrees, and I'm going to cut from short to long on top, creating ramp shape.
Turn this way because of the line.
Perfect. There you go. So, starting at the back, connecting to my baseline here. So we cut earlier. It's pulling up straight out 90 degrees from the head shape. So this is still going to create that square shape on the back section of the head for me. And now that I'm moving away from the back part of the crown as I'm transitioning up towards the high point of the head, I'm pulling up everything 90 from the head shape. Right here, still cutting. Don't cut past second knuckle. And then now I'm going to transition into more of a prominent ramp shape here once I've gotten to my high point of my head. So right there. But I'm not going to do anything super, super crazy. But now I'm going to cut from short to long right here. Just so when we blow dry, we have a nice ramp shape in our pompadour. And as I move towards the front, cutting off less and less. So once I've established my center guide, the next step is all I'm going to do is take the hair closest to me and pull it up center and over direct to center. Take the hair furthest away from me, pull it up center and direct. Yes, when we cut it, it's going to create somewhat of a concave line. We're not going to go that heavy with that concave shape just because we're over directing. You're going to lose a little bit of that straightness, but that's what the refinement for is afterwards. If you want to completely avoid doing any sort of refinement like that, if you're comfortable doing so, you can point cut. I wouldn't always recommend it on wet hair, but if you know what you're doing, if you're more of a veteran barber or stylist, you can cut a little bit. Point cut is wet. If you know what it's going to do, just be careful of the tension you're putting on the hair because of course it's going to spring back. Also be aware of the density of the hair and where you're not taking too much out if it is finer.
Nicholas,
Yes, ma'am.
we're in the home stretch, but here's a question for you. Are you starting the ramp shape at about the apex of the head?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just so I'm starting at the apex of the head that way. I know what my highest point is. A lot of the times, let me try to see how I want to answer this. If I started too far back, it's going to collapse in because the hair in the crown right there is going to be way too short. So I just like to start at the apex. I hope that answers your question. Okay, everything's connected on top. So now we're going to connect the sides to the top. This is one of my favorite things to do. Take the natural recession here, go into the apex. I'm going to create a triangle parting across the top of the head. I'm going to do the right side first, comb all this stuff out of the way. Now all I'm going to do is pull everything down, not to 90 degrees, slightly below my 90 degrees. If I did 90, it's going to build more weight, and I don't want that. But here's my guide underneath. I'm just going to connect the top to the sides. So many different ways to do this. Sometimes I'll pull vertical sections, sometimes I'll pull horizontal. down like this. It just depends on what you're most comfortable with. But a lot of times if you're starting out, I would recommend horizontal because you have more control over the section. So once I pull down center, pull forward over here, direct back to my center a little bit. Now I'm working the corners. So one of the biggest questions I get as far as teaching this stuff is how do you connect these corners? Just comb it down to the corner right there and connect. And then brush everything back. You see that we blend nice. That's what we want. All right, so we're gonna do the same process on the opposite side. Same thing, you take your natural recession right here, triangle section to the high point of the head or your apex, depending on which terminology you are familiar with. Same thing, pull down. You can see my guide right there, and I'm gonna cut. Now as I move forward, kick that out just a little bit, see my guide underneath, cut. And now we're in the corner. You can see this heavy weight right here. When we're talking about weight, you see all this heavy hair right here, and you see our shorter section, our guideline underneath, which is our baseline from earlier. That's what I'm talking about when I say weight. A lot of the times it might take a while for you to train your eye to be able to see that sort of thing. But trust me, it comes with time and experience. I didn't always know what they were talking about, they being other educators or other senior barbers to me at first, when they were talking about weight and how to identify it. All right, everything brushed back looks cool. So now we're going to connect the triangle section to the sides. Save this one for last. All I'm doing is combing all this stuff down. I'm not going to elevate it a whole lot because I want to keep this length here. Combing straight down. And just repeat on the opposite side. And if you want a softer line, feel free to elevate up more if you want to, if you're not super comfortable cutting super low like that. One of those things that I try to keep in mind. I just want a little bit of length up there as far as the top of that pompadour goes. All right, cool. So now we'll get into the blow drying. Any questions about connecting the top to the sides or creating your mohawk section on top?
Question is, what kind of scissors are you working with?
So I am using my Mizutani Scora Master 6.5, Bloody Butcher edition, so they're pink. I actually, I brag on myself for a minute, I got picked up to work for the Mizutani AEC team last year during September. Since I'm already working with Reuzel, I'm already using Mizutani, which makes sense. It's my favorite scissors, especially the House of Reuzel ones. All of our scissors, my favorite. So now we're transitioning to the top. First things first, what I want to do is use the Reuzel Grooming Tonic. For me, this acts like as a thermal styling protectant. All the shape that I've cut into this hair, it's going to help hold it. It's a light shine, it's a light hold. And realistically, if we were finished with the blow dry, if Alan wanted to, he could leave with just this in his hair and he'd be fine. But I like to use this when I'm blow drying, kind of help protect the cuticle of the hair so we don't damage it with the blow dryer. And since I'm doing more of a classic pompadour, I wanted to use more of a classic product for today's demonstration. So just a little bit, pull it in the hands, cover my hands in it. If it drips, you got too much, no drippage, so we're good to go. Now when I apply, I'm working from the scalp out to the ends. Be careful because you can use too much. And then you'll end up blow drying forever. You can towel dry the hair before you apply it if you want to, if the hair is not super saturated with water, but for the most part, we're okay. All right, so I grab my blow dryer here, and we'll get into this blow drying session. So when I blow dry, what I like to do is I work from the back corner to the front corner, repeat on the opposite side, corner, front, and then top, section 3 being my fringe. So My blow dryer is going to be a high speed, medium heat. And it'll blow everything back into the direction that we're styling. Same thing, I'm cutting into the direction I'm styling and blow drying in the direction that the hair is going to be styled. It's all, that's the common theme here. That's what we got going on. I'm using a vented Denman brush just to allow the airflow through the brush a little bit easier instead of splitting off and going around it. You want to put on the roots at first, make sure everything's nice and dry at the roots, allow the hair to stand up naturally. Now if I transition into section 2, I'm going to angle my blow dryer up. That way you're catching all these little hairs right here and they're going up and out. And I'm not so much using the brush to position the hairs, I'm just kind of moving it wherever the blow dryer is placing it. You really want to make sure that the hair is nice and dry here. What I like to do with John's hair a lot of the time is give him a crazy jelly roll, but he's going to work, so I'm going to keep it kind of tame. I want the old ladies at the clinic freaking out about his sweet haircut too much. Checking the hair to see how dry we are. We're getting there. Any questions so far? Once I get done with the blow dry here, we're going to go into removing some weight. And then we will style them up. So once I change sides, I change hands with the blow dryer. That was one of the other big things that I learned when I got on the team. I didn't really understand why we did that. But again, it's all about keeping your body positioning square. I remember at one of the Scumbassador educating, one of the events I went to go help at, that's one of the things, like, that's the aha moment a lot of the time when you teach these people and some of the new educators getting onto the team, like switching hands, like a huge moment for them a lot of the time. Especially me as a barber when I first started, I was like, man, this is crazy. It's so much easier to just switch hands with your blow dryer. Okay, this is before. When you get towards the front, angle your blow dryer so you can push the hair in the direction you want. The thing about John's hair is it just retains moisture so often. One day, John came out here and he was a model for me. We did like 3 or 4 different haircuts in one day. I was just torturing him for like 4 hours. It was awesome. So we got a bunch of really great looks from it. Okay, so things nice and dry. All right, so now as we transition to the very front, section 3, what I like to do is have your client or model place their head down. And then that way, when I'm blow drying up and out, the gravity is pulling that hair down, so it helps me get a higher pompadour. As they say, the higher the pompadour, the closer to Elvis or something. Really focusing on the roots. I really want the roots to be nice and dry. And this is really the only time that I'm actually gripping the hair on the scalp and pulling straight up. I didn't do that towards the back because I want the back part of my pompadour towards the crown to lay flat. So for me, pompadour, a lot of the volume is going to be up in your front from your hairline to your apex, right before your apex. You get that really nice pompadour. All right, you can bring that up. So the goal here isn't necessarily to blow dry all his wave out. We like his wave, but I do just want that volume up front. And his hair's probably going to be a little pokey outy on that one side. We're working it apart for a while, but his hair's long enough that we can brush it back. And his hair is just at that stage of the grow out where like just a little more length and it'll do what you want it to do. We've been growing this out from skin fade, haven't we? Something like that. All right, so now we'll get into just some blending scissor work, just kind of take out any heaviness, any sort of weight that we might have left from when we got that straight line on the top. I don't see anything really, nothing too crazy because we didn't take a whole lot off. There you go, there's a little bit of weight in there. And when I use my blending scissors, what I typically like to do is just hit that last third of the hair strand. I don't want to go too deep into it. So I'm just trying to remove weight. I'm not trying to add support right now. And the same shape that we cut in, that ramp shape, is the same shape I'm holding my comb and I'm positioning my body to work with. Right, everything's looking good. And you can use this time now if you wanted to point cut with your straight scissor, with your blenders. Maybe you got a 12-2 texturizer like I will have sometimes. It just depends on what your end result is going to be. I'm not going to do any heavy texturizing to him because I want it to be more of like a classic pompadour. I'm using some grease pomade today. I feel like we've been showcasing a lot of like matte finishes, a lot of texturized finishes, just because we've been releasing products to do that sort of thing. And because I've already showcased other looks like that. So I just want to do something a little more classic today. Just looking for some more weight. A little bit of weight in there. Just hit it, clean it up a little bit. And if you wanted to go through like what Rob does a lot of the times, he'll go back through with his clippers and clean up a lot of stuff. It just depends on what you want to do to attack it. So I got some weight right here. We'll just go in and hit it. Moving my comb as I'm doing it, that way I'm not chunking anything out. And same thing on the opposite side. Comb it into place, everything looks good. And it wouldn't be a pompadour if I wasn't doing the bloody knuckles technique. I'm gonna pull all this up. This technique for the bloody knuckles a lot of the time is just wherever you feel weight, wherever you feel like it might be heavy towards the end of the hair. So got it back in there. All right, feels great, looks great. Now we're gonna style them out. For John today, I'm gonna use a mixture of our pink grease pomade, heavy hold pink, a little bit of the water soluble, medium hold, high sheen red pomade. I'm going to be nice to him today, so I'm going to put the red first so he has a water soluble base, and then I'll cover it after that with the pink for the hold. So then once he gets home and he breaks through the grease pomade, the water soluble red will rinse right out. That's a little, that's a fun fact there. If you have guys in your chair that are having a hard time rinsing product out of their hair and they like to wear grease, suggest to them that they maybe use a water soluble product first. So about a knuckle's worth of pomade, take it, middle of my hand, emulsify, come over here. Cover my hands, typically, I like to imagine that if I just pressed my hands up against a freshly painted wall, so it's nice and evenly distributed on the head, on the hands. And then as I'm working the product into the hair, I'm going to work from the ends, or the scalp out to the ends, excuse me, just to make sure that there's pomade evenly distributed everywhere. So I work from the ends, sorry, I keep on saying ends, from the scalp to the ends, from the crown to the front, and then the sides, and then I hit the top. Kind of raking it through with my fingers, making sure everything's there. One of the cool things, when you leave all this length on the side, you put product into the sides of the hair, that's really sick. It's a really nice effect. When you're brushing everything, all your comb lines will look really nice. So then after you apply your water-soluble base, it doesn't have to be red. Maybe they like a matte finish. Maybe you want to use the clay matte pomade, the white can. You can do that as well, as long as it's a water-soluble base. So I'm going to use pink, same thing, 1 knuckle's worth of pink, emulsify, heat it up. Same thing. I don't necessarily have to work towards the roots so much because I have a base of product there already. Now it's just more so hitting the top, making sure that I can shape it how I want to with my pick and my comb. We're almost finished here. I tend to talk a lot when I do these, so thanks for sticking around with me for the hour or so that we've been doing this.
It's tons of great information. Thanks, Nick. We really appreciate your explanations.
Of course. And to think I didn't used to talk a couple of years ago. That's great.
I remember that. You were shy.
I can't shut up. All right. So once I evenly distribute the product all over the head, I take my metal pick. It's the secret weapon. I'm going to work from the scalp up and out. And this isn't me styling right now. This is just helping distribute the product throughout the hair. It's one of those things where a lot of the times, let me find one of these other combs that I have in my pockets. A lot of the times people place our product into their client's head and then take this comb and then try to create volume. That's like 1 inch wide compared to the 3 or 4 inches of the pick here. So it's going to be able to cut through the product way, way easier using a metal pick than using a normal styling comb. Making sure that we hit sides there. We put all that product in there, and you can see how awesome that is. It's one of my favorite things. Is seeing all those little feathers from all those sections. So transition to the other side. So we blow dry this real high so we get that really tall pompadour. There's going to be a little problem child here. I knew that was going to be an issue, but it's working out just fine. And then once you evenly distribute everything, you can get in there and really shape it up. I like to pull the pomp as high as I can get it. And then just tap it into place. Maybe have it fall a little bit. Rock and roll, a little bit of rock and roll right there. And then, if you want to refine the sides, feel free to refine the sides. Clean up those lines. You want nice tension on the comb. The comb's going to do most of the work, and then you can come up behind it with your fingers and pat everything into place. Yeah, like I was saying earlier with John's hair, like you just get all these awesome little waves. It just kind of does whatever it wants to do. It's pretty sick. So there you have it. There's my pompadour. Any questions about the techniques or anything that we use to achieve this look today or the products, feel free to drop them in the comment box. I'll go back through later and check them out and answer anything if I can't do it now before we sign off. I really do appreciate everybody hanging out with me on this Monday or Tuesday, depending on where you are in the world. And there it is.
We appreciate you, Nicholas. Thank you. It looks great. Spectacular cut. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And please come on back next Monday, same time, same place. Rich Keeley is going to join us. He's a Scumbassador from the Tampa, Florida area. It's his first time, so let's show him some love and big Reuzel support as he spreads the greasy gospel. Nicholas, take care. Thank you, everyone. Be safe
Thanks,
and
everybody.
stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye.